welcoming all of you to this hosted discussion in a way. It's a pleasure to have Philippe Rosinski and Sreekanth Arimanithaya. Each one of them is a leader in their own right. And we are primarily looking at ensuring that we have a good discussion. The topic today is all about how can managers and leaders be a magnet for talent. That's exactly what we want to go and talk about today. And very clearly, the timing is right. I hear a number of you talking about the great resignation, war on talent, etc. And I think what we are primarily looking at here is to understand perspectives from everybody here, from Sri as well as Philippe. I remember being in a conversation with a HR leader this morning. It was as early as 6:30 in the morning. And we were having a conversation. And after a good conversation, I asked him, hey, his name was Philippe as well. So I said, hey, Philippe, what else is happening with you? He said, Venkat, I'm spending a lot of time recruiting right now. I said, isn't that what your team should be doing? He said, no, this is primarily senior leaders, but it's not the standard type of recruiting. I'm actually spending a lot of time selling. I am selling how great the organization is. I'm selling our organization to everybody else. And that's the new normal. In a way, there is a lot on the new normal, but then let's go ahead and get the experts to go ahead and contribute to it. Right. So that's what we want to go ahead and look at. Right. So at this stage, let me get started by introducing Sri and Philippe to all of you. Sri is the global talent leader for Ernst & Young for global delivery services. That's about a 45,000 member organization. He looks after global talent, comes with tremendous amount of respect within the system, comes with tremendous amount of perspective, has a wonderful heart. Thank you so much, Sri, for being with us. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Philippe Rosinski, he has authored 2 books. One of them is recommended reading in Harvard, and he's among the Thinkers 50 right now. It's a pleasure and privilege, Philippe, to have us with us to share your perspectives as well. Allow me to get started by primarily asking Sri. Sri, we have heard a lot about this war of talent. We have heard a lot about hybrid ways of working. There is a lot of noise. There is a lot of signals. Help us understand from your perspective as the global leader, what truly are you seeing, Sri? You have to unmute yourself,
yeah.
Sri.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to spend some time with you guys. I'm really excited. So if you really look at, I have around 3 decades of experience and always attracting, engaging and retaining employees was a topic discussed throughout my career. But I never seen an intensity and the open dialogue among various people in the industry on war for talent and the great resignation and the future of work. When I joined EY, I started telling my team the business of talent is business. And whose business is talent? It's everyone's business. So we are not alone. Earlier, hiring issues, recruitment issues, or retention issues was the issue of a talent leader. It's not anybody's issue. So you get blamed. Today, we share equal responsibility in attracting, engaging, and retaining. In fact, the business leaders are more responsible than a talent leader. So they need to own these programs around this. So the way I started the business of talent is business. Today, I tell business leaders the business of business is talent. Because we are in every discussion, the demand is very high. Every business has demands. No doubt about it. You not go and sell it for more demands. But the supply is a huge problem. And it is really triggered by many facts. One of my observations is every industry today is transforming, and they have potential to grow with the digital penetration in their business. Functions like talent, when I say talent, it's HR or finance or marketing or every industry, it's manufacturing or retail or e-commerce, you name it, every industry is going through huge transformation. And they understood the future of this business is next generation talent and skills. And next generation talent is not only digital technology talent, but also digital mindset and transformative leadership concept is what industry is looking for. And everybody is going behind this scarce talent and creating a huge shortage in supply. And I also have seen since the time to deliver the huge business opportunity is very narrow, people are still going with the conventional way of hiring. I want a perfect fit of the talent. I call it as best fit. If you have 10 competencies, I want all 10 competencies high. So everybody defines the talent in that way. But very few companies are going behind stretch the fit and the best bet. So you have a perfect fit, that's what you want. But nobody is looking at best bet and stretch the fit. And these are adjacency skills. And nobody is looking at that because they don't have time to get these people and invest in accelerate assimilations or training wherever they gap. As a result, a huge demand on that. And you know, when it's a candidates market, today candidates, every candidate have 3 offers before they change job. I used to earlier negotiate on their current salary. Now I need to negotiate on the latest offer. And as a result, people are really doing crazy things like you join, I'll give a BMW bike. And we are really pampering the entire candidates market, but that's the way. But I feel the organization and the HR practice are a little more thoughtful. I see this as an opportunity not to be part of the crazy war for talent by throwing money at everything. And money cannot solve the problem. We'll discuss later. But I'm just looking at how can we sustain this race, and how do you really, in this mass hiring, how do you really hire the right people who culturally fit to the organization and who really share the same ethos and the same purpose? Like our purpose is a building better working world, and who share our similar purpose. So Venkat, as we talk, my headcount is today 60,000. 45 means maybe last time when we spoke. And I'm currently working on 30,000 open demands. And in next 2-3 years, my total headcount will be 150,000. So such an acceleration, I'm very careful in growing. I need to grow because huge demands, but how do you build the talent who is really, really, I call it as genuine talent. It's not hyped up, and who really come not for money alone. They're looking for beyond that, have a purpose. And we are going to tie up that purpose with the work purpose and organization purpose. Maybe I'll take a minute to talk about future of work. And I think future of work was already there, always there when it comes to, because digital has really opened up new definition of work, workplace, worker, well-being, and ways of work. I call 5 Ws. But COVID has accelerated this. Many of things, whether it's gig workers or remote working or virtual working or all these things, it has accelerated because that's a need of the time. But we'll discuss where it lands. Maybe I'll stop here. So that's my perspective.
Thanks for that, Sri. And it looks like lots happening, and it's a candidates market. But then I'm curious. I mean, Philippe, there is a saying that has been very prevalent, which says people don't leave their jobs, they leave their managers or leaders. Correct? From your vantage point, Philippe, what is this managerial deficit that you see?
Well, thank you, Venkat. Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. Well, there are several levels. At the first level, the reality is that we still have, despite the war for talent and so on, some managers that are actually toxic, who are creating a very unhealthy environment. They could be putting unnecessary pressure. They could be shunning creativity. They could be just always critical as well. And when you have that, of course, that is very unpleasant. And as an employee, if I have other options, for sure, I'm not going to stay with this type of manager. But maybe that unfortunately is not the majority. But what often happens is transactional relationships where the manager is looking at his employees as just resources, to have achieved some business objectives. And that may not be enough for people to feel a genuine sense of connection. I think people are longing for something deeper, to be considered as human beings. They would like a manager who really cares for them as human beings, able to establish a genuine personal connection with them. And ideally, also, we would want to have a coaching philosophy where leaders, managers are not only there to establish a genuine connection, but are really committed to helping people unleash their potential, access their own potential, so they can have a fulfilling life, a fulfilling career, and at the same time, be at their best when it comes to performance. That, unfortunately, today is still the exception rather than the norm, and which means that there is an opportunity to just improve leadership in general. If you want to attract, retain talent, well, that's a place to consider.
Wonderful.
Venkat, I'll just add one quick perspective, with your permission. So I happened to hear a kind of a keynote speech when I was in Britannia Industries. And I don't know the name of the company. They were my neighbors. Their CEO was addressing our leaders. And he said he has been in that company almost 22 years as a CEO. From nothing, he brought that company $2 billion revenue. So he said, when I joined this firm, a lot of youngsters joined along with me at a very shop floor, at a blue collar level. And they always tell me today, these guys have grown, they had family, their children started growing up, and many of their children are in US and Europe going higher education and got a job. So they say always that organization is a temple for us. And we worship that temple because we made our fortune in this company. But managers are the devil in that temple. And that's the word he used. And the reason is, he says, this company has gone through almost 12 strikes and 3 lockouts in 20 years. And he attribute many of the reason is the managers not really doing their job. So I always tell my colleagues, leading others is an honor or a privilege. You need to be doing it with extraordinary care. I always say there are 4 functions which is noble. One is teaching. I have 3 sisters who are teachers. They're noble profession. Second one is doctor or medicine or healthcare workers. The noble profession. Third one is leadership or managers. And fourth one is HR professionals. It's much noble because the way you can impact the lives of the people. As a leader, you impact the lives of the people and their family and the community. And you really, if you can do it well, you can inspire not only your immediate managers, the society. And that's an opportunity, but most of the managers don't realize that it's a noble profession and it's an honor and privilege to lead others.
Absolutely. Wonderfully said, Sri. And thanks for that perspective, Philippe. Now I'm thinking, I mean, if managers are so crucial, then what is possibly required is this foundation of values. Now, I respect Sri as this leader who has this solid foundation of values. Tell us about some of these values that are important for managers, Sri.
Absolutely. When I do any leadership development, my leadership development philosophy, I developed in early formative days of my leadership journey from Toyota and GE. I still admire this company. It's not the GE of today's, which already fragmented. I'm talking when Jack Welch was in GE, I was working there. When Jack Welch was leading GE, he given phenomenal importance to value-based leadership or value-based management practices. And in fact, he used to tell values drives behavior and behavior drives actions and action drives success. That's a kind of a chain. So the fundamental performance, always look at performance at the peak of a pyramid. Then comes the actions you have taken to deliver that performance. But most of the organizations get confused with actions for results. unfortunately. And excuses are nurtured in that culture, but results are results. But if we can minimize the distance between actions and results, then you really do well. Then behind the actions are your behavior, leadership behavior traits, what we talk all the time. And a good leadership program attacks the behavioral competencies, not the functional and domain, which is today a commodity. And below the behavior is the values, which you nurture. And I will go 2 more steps down. When you do any interventions, you need to really ensure that your values are nurtured through your beliefs. The beliefs you nurture throughout the childhood, through the schoolings and your community and your early experience in the companies you work as an individual contributor. And below that is the experience. The experience you nurture throughout the life, I call signature experience. Some of us are very blessed to have a signature experience from our life. So this experience drives beliefs, beliefs drives behavior, behavior drives, values drives behavior, behavior drives action, action drives results. So managers' values are so important, and managers develop these values through signature experiences as well as their belief system. And we can put a big list of values which all of us have strongly believed. But I will call out 2 or 3 things that it's fundamental for a good leadership traits in terms of values. One is the integrity. Integrity is one thing, a hallmark of any leader, and it's a binary, either you have it or not have it. So how do you really drive that integrity? Integrity is not in terms of bribery or manipulating, but for me, integrity in leadership. That means when I say something, I have the authenticity in that saying something. That means I don't manipulate data. If I don't know, I will tell I don't know. So that is the leadership integrity, not faking it and taking. People will figure it out. So the 2 important value I nurtured in my career, and I've seen good leaders. One is the integrity, leadership integrity, not the ethics, and that's given today's world. It's a leadership integrity. You know, what you don't know, and your ability to really tell the people around you and work around that. The second one is authenticity. That means as you leaders, when you grow, you are visible and vulnerable. So you should be comfortable in your skin. So that value are about authenticity and integrity. But we can put many things, but I give these 2 values as most important. I've seen very successful leaders nurture this authenticity and integrity, leadership integrity, very well in their journey.
Very nice, very nice. And what I'm learning from what you're saying, Sri, is that the values, there is a set of values which are almost hygiene factors now, right? Yeah. But these important elements that you talked about, let's talk to Philippe. Philippe, I mean, there are a lot of perspectives that managers should be aware of, but the fact is a lot of them are underutilized. I mean, tell us a little bit more there, Philippe.
Yes. Well, leadership is something that we are not necessarily born with. It is something we can learn. It's a lifelong journey. And what I found is that indeed there are many perspectives that could be considered if we want to advance on that journey, and they range from the physical all the way to the spiritual. I've developed an approach looking at 6 perspectives in particular. And to be fair, I think all are typically underutilized in my experience by most managers, most executives. So let me go quickly one by one. At the base, I would say the physical perspective. It's about being healthy and fit, having a sense of vitality for yourself, but also promoting well-being and healthiness in your organization. So we cannot control everything, but there are things we can do if we want to stay in shape, if we want to have a sense of vitality. And my role as a coach is, by the way, not to impose, of course, a style, any prescription in this domain. Everyone is free to have his or her own lifestyle. But if people are interested in staying fit, in being healthy, more resistant to stress, then the physical perspective is something to be considered in a systematic way that involves physical activity, nutrition, sleep. A lot of managers these days cut on their sleep and then they are tired all the time. So that's one of the perspectives. A second perspective that I think is well known, but still underutilized, I would call it the managerial perspective. And that involves, for example, being able to shift your leadership style to address a variety of situations. Some people tend to delegate all the time when in fact, the person they are delegating to may not be ready to take that responsibility, may not have the experience to take on that responsibility. And conversely, we have leaders, executives who keep on telling things, keep on micromanaging when in fact they should be using more of a coaching style. So the managerial perspective is also one to consider. Psychology is an important perspective. How can you build constructive relationship at work? How can you ensure we avoid negative psychological games? How can you be humble and yet confident? How can you have confidence without being arrogant? How can you build on people's strengths? How can you recognize people's strengths? How can you take into account the fact that people have different personalities? We are not all the same, and how can you capitalize on that? A lot can be learned from psychology, and there are different schools within psychology. Managers typically know some of this, but there is a lot more, in my experience, that they could learn about. Then we have the cultural perspective. The cultural perspective is about understanding and appreciating cultural differences. When you are mindful about cultural differences, different ways of thinking, different ways of communicating, different ways of managing time, and so on, what this allows you to do is to build unity in diversity, because now I can have an appreciation for difference and I can leverage differences that can promote unity, that can promote inclusion. But this can also serve to promote creativity and innovation, because we are not just condemned with one view of the world that may or may not work so well. We can open ourselves to different ways of thinking, different ways of approaching a situation. We can be more creative. The political perspective is also one that is often overlooked. I see a lot of senior executives who are doing an excellent job, and then they get passed over for promotion and they become very frustrated. And they have not realized that it's not enough to do a good job. You also need to build your power, and that doesn't need to be done in a negative way. It can be constructive if you are using your power not just for yourself, but to serve others, to serve various stakeholders. And that involves systematically engaging, for example, in building alliances. So you have people who can help you achieve your goals. And finally, the spiritual perspective. It's about meaning and purpose. And I was reading just the other day an article about the new generation. They are looking for meaning and purpose even more so than the older generation. I'm also looking for purpose and meaning, by the way, even though I'm not so young anymore. Still young at heart, but not so young in terms of my age. But I think it's becoming more and more important. So if we have leaders, executives who are just talking about, hey, we need to increase the bottom line, we need to increase market share, that's not going to be enough to inspire people. We see a lot of issues in the world today, the climate crisis, poverty, a lot of issues in the world, the destructions of ecosystems. What is your company doing to help address those societal issues? That's very important to be able to articulate that in, as Sri was saying, in an integrity, with integrity and with authenticity. It's not something that you're faking. It has to really matter to you as a leader. But if you can do that with integrity and authenticity, that's how you can inspire people. So there are many different perspectives. And the reality in my experience is that few leaders have considered those perspectives in a systematic fashion, and they miss then an opportunity to grow and to be able to tap into those talents that are becoming scarcer and scarcer.
Wonderfully said, Philippe. Wonderfully said. I mean, in fact, I'm a huge subscriber to all of those 6 perspectives that you talk about. And it's amazing how there is a huge difference between awareness and action, right? And I think, I mean, what it behoves of all of these managers is, with so much happening around, are we authentically having truthful conversations about what's really happening within the organization. So how can managers speak the truth in trying circumstances, in difficult circumstances? Sri, what has been your experiences of managers building that backbone to speak the truth in difficult circumstances, Sri?
Absolutely. It's a great question. So if you really look at today, like Philippe mentioned, transactional leadership is a big challenge. People are too transactional focused. And I believe a transformational leadership. Today, we want transformational leaders who are leading to win, not leading not to lose. So in transactional leadership, your energy is put in to ensure that I'm not losing the game. You are governed by fear, fear of failure, fear of unknown. So since fear drives you, you ensure that I don't lose the game. But transformational leaders lead to win. For them, draw is not okay. So analogy of football, if you're a transactional leader, you defend your goalpost. But a transformative leader, you'll be an opponent's goalpost. You have to win the game. Draw is not okay. So that's a kind of a change we are expecting today's leadership. You want transformational leader, like Philippe mentioned. The core of transformational leader is purpose. And you are purpose driven. Then how do you ensure that every day I'm better me? I'm a better leader. And every day ensure that we are better us as a team. And how do you ensure that we have a better working world, which Philippe mentioned? That's our purpose. So coming back into your pointed question, one of the challenge I have seen is as a leader, like Aristotle mentioned long back, when you drive this transformation, it can be small transformation of a process or a functional transformation, organizational transformation. A lot of time employees spend their energy to define the current ways of doing it. A lot of energy is spent on that. But you as a leader, how you divert that energy of defending to where we need to go, looking forward to new ways of working, new ways of doing. So how do you channelize that energy from defending the status quo to channelize that energy to moving forward? There, the authentic leadership is very, very important. So I remember when I was in GE, they had a toolkit called CAP, Change Acceleration Process. So in change acceleration process, it talks about 5 steps in transformation of change. One is you should have a shared vision for change. That means if a leader only talks about his vision, but it's not shared by the stakeholders and the team, it will not be successful. So how do you create a shared vision for change? That's what Carter also mentioned in his 8 steps in change. The second one is how do you really create a shared need for change? Before you share the vision, you should have shared need for change. If the people around you don't feel about need for change, then you put a compelling vision, they will not buy it. I said, what is wrong in today? So how do you create a shared need for change? Then how do you create a shared vision for change? Then how do you mobilize commitment from every stakeholders around that vision? Everyone have a role in the play. Then the third one is how do you change then the structure and systems and process? Then normally we get into changing systems and process, then people get very defensive, but you need to create need, vision, and mobilize. Then last one is how do you change last long? So in this, one of the toughest thing is convincing people with authentic data and authenticity, where people will trust you. And that trust is need to build over a period of time. Even I can tell 100 times, trust me, people will not trust you. I've seen leaders telling, trust me. So I'm really worried when he says, trust me, then underlying is something cooking there. So how do you rebuild a trust through authenticity? So one of the things I always believe to build that authenticity is always you need to work with the data. The data speaks itself. The data have both qualitative and quantitative data. And quantitative data easy to present to our team, but qualitative data about feelings, sentiments, and all things are very difficult to collect it and present in a structured way to people where they appeal to their emotions. Second one is after data, if they don't really with you and they don't believe in this, then the next question is you have to demonstrate it. A leader should be able to demonstrate it. The data is I can collect benchmarking data. I've done many times. So this is good for then you should be demonstrating. People only believe it when they see it. So you need to demonstrate it. And after data and demonstration, there are stages I have demanded. I've given you data, I have demonstrated how to do it or how it works through Today, the concept of agile change management, you need to show the minimum viable product very early to the people so that they will believe in it. It's going to work. We call it in early wins and everything. You, after giving data and after demonstrating what it takes, then the leader should have the courage and conviction to demand. And I have seen sometimes people don't look at the data and they don't believe in the demonstration. You need to say, you have to move on. We don't have time to debate in a meeting. I've taken a stand up, said, I heard enough, we debated enough. Now let's move on. And moving objects always can change direction. Static object never can change direction. So let's move on. Discussed enough. Now we need to move on. We learn together. And if I'm wrong, I'll correct myself. If you're right, if you're wrong, you need to correct yourself. Let's move on. So the underlying is authenticity. The authenticity comes from repeated actions from a leader, and people will watch leaders' behavior, and it cannot be built over time. You need to really nurture in your career.
Beautiful. Very nice. Very nice. And I'm thinking, I mean, with all of these leaders and so much of change, there is this transformation that's also happening, which is about leaders and managers becoming global. In a way, it's no longer me, I'm invested only in my country. We are all becoming global. So that means they have to develop some of the cultural dimensions and political dimensions. Philippe, what are your perspectives on how managers should develop those core skills, Philippe?
Well, thank you, Venkat. Maybe one word is the word should. When you say, oh, they should do that. As a coach, I try to avoid coming to people saying you should do that, because what may happen then is to get their resistance. So I wouldn't want them to just try to do something because I've told them you should do that. But hopefully by instead giving them a sense of the merits of learning from alternative perspectives so they can expand their own horizons, increase their own sense of fulfillment. So as a coach, I start with what is important for people themselves, what drives them. And so how can they paradoxically perhaps not change, but becoming a greater or more complete form of themselves. So it's not about changing them. That may scare them sometimes, but it's about having them being more connected with various parts that exist within themselves. So practically, it's about helping them, first of all, raise their awareness about how they are currently communicating, how they are currently managing time, how they are currently organizing themselves. Ask a number of questions so they become aware of their cultural preferences, their values, their assumptions, their beliefs, and they start to realize that, hey, there is a certain worldview here that may work in certain cases, but you can be effective in one context. But if you move in a different context, what has made you effective in that first context will not necessarily make you effective in a different context. What you need to do then is develop your behavioral flexibility. And you don't do that because I tell you should, but because you start to develop a genuine appreciation for what a different perspective can bring to you. If I tend, for example, to communicate very directly, I tend to be blunt, I tend to be very straightforward. I could value the fact of being clear and direct, but now I can maybe develop an appreciation for indirect communication, I can appreciate that, maintaining harmony, ensuring that nobody loses face, having harmony is also going to be something beneficial. And maybe if I could incorporate that in my leadership approach and in my personality, I could be a richer human being, a better leader. Likewise, with time, I mean, if I tend to be rushing all the time because time is scarce for me, and I've learned to be very productive, and I'm promoting that in my organization as well, that people are always productive, that they do a lot of things in a short amount of time. Maybe I can learn to slow down, to become more relaxed. By doing that, I will perhaps better discern what is truly important. I can become effective, not just efficient, effective in that I can focus on what really matters. doing the right things as opposed to just doing things right. So the idea here is to expand my horizons. And by doing that, not only will I become more creative, but I will also become better able to work in a variety of contexts to, instead of being critical when somebody behaves differently, I can now appreciate the positive intention. So rather than alienating other people because they have a sense that I don't understand them, I don't respect them, I can instead have a deep appreciation for them. To use three words, authentic appreciation. It's not that I'm faking this, but I have come to understand what they bring to the table. I appreciate that. And as a leader, I can build through unity in diversity. So that is increasingly needed indeed, not only because we are more and more working internationally, but even in a given country, there are many differences. And there as well, we need to be mindful of differences that exist as possibilities for our own expansion.
Very nice, very nice. And what I'm gathering from that, Philippe, is that our view of the world is not the only view of the world. The more we build a vocabulary to understand everybody else, that's when life becomes even better. Yeah.
Yes, and I have to say that is not something that leaders, managers have typically learned. That's not part. With some exceptions, I'm a professor in a business school in Japan, and that the coaching across culture of a manager is part of the mandatory curriculum. That I have to say is the exception rather than the norm. For the most part, we have very senior leaders, executives who don't know this at all, I'm sorry to say. Really, they have not spent any time thinking about this.
Wonderful, wonderful. So which means that leaders need to learn, but the more they need to learn, there is some baggage they need to leave behind as well. I'm reminded of this book that I read. It's called The Phoenix Encounter Method. Interesting book where it talks about the phoenix, which means it burns itself down so that it can recreate itself.
Yes.
Right? And of course, it takes me back to Harry Potter, but that's a different situation later on. But what we're talking about is, what is it that we need to adopt as the phoenix within organizations? What do managers need to break down or burn down, which are their beliefs and behaviors? What are your perspectives, Sri?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned earlier, the leading others or management is not a title. A lot of people see it as a title and they look at the power of that title gives to them to manage people and the perquisites and compensation coming with the title. And most of the people aspire to get there because of the title gives power and fringe benefits around that. For me, if you really look at a leadership journey, I happen to read a book called Novation. If you remove I of a word innovation, you get a word novation. The meaning of novation is renegotiating a return contract. And he says life is, career is like a renegotiating a return contract, not renegotiating your employment offer, but how do you renegotiate among yourself and the ecosystems around you as you grow in your career. So there are 4 stages of career, like you have stages in life, like neonatal to childhood, adolescence, like that old age. So career have 4 stages: learn, do, guide, and shape. So when you start your career, you are learning. You never stops learning when you start doing yourself. Then after doing yourself, you have to guide and teach others. Then after some time, you have to shape a business, shape a function, or shape a community, or shape a transform. Shape means transform. So in this journey, if you really look at the first 2 stages, learn and do, are individual contributor behavior. That means you are learning yourself and doing yourself. The focus is me and mine and I. So once you become guiding and shaping a business, the focus is on others. It's not less on you. And how do I leverage others? How do I optimize others? How do you empower others? And the focus is not on you, it's focusing on others. But very few people I have seen in my own experience will transition to that individual contributor behavior to leveraging others and optimizing others behavior very very few people migrate into that. So there you don't spend time for you, you spend for others. So that is one of the biggest threshold a leader need to consciously understand, saying that the focus shifting from me and myself and I to others, and he or she, and how do you really develop them. So that's the first one. The second one, as I mentioned, some of the early strength in a career can be latent derailers, isn't it? All of us don't notice, and when we start our career, we have a lot of strength, which got recognized, which got rewarded, but that become a latent derailer, and people really doesn't. That's the exactly what you are telling. How do I really stop doing which I was doing for years? So how do I challenge my own beliefs, so that it doesn't become a derailer for me? And how do you consciously change that is another big challenge. And the last comment on this is I always feel that today people need to seldom migrate from a waterfall thinking and waterfall behavior to an agile behavior. That is today's world is agile. So manager need to learn agility while doing things, or managers need to learn by doing things, and how to apply what you learned in the next setting is very, very important for a leader. But very few people understand how do I really learn while doing and apply that learning in the next scenario. So to summarize it, the challenge of a leader when he transition into leadership responsibility, optimizing and others. One, how do you build a competency associated with that? How to optimize others? How do you vision? How do you encourage people? How do you empower people? How do you motivate people? These are the traits many managers lose it because they're not transitioned into that individual contributor behavior to others. So how do you develop certain competencies required to be a true manager, and by burning out certain things and give space to acquire new skills? Otherwise, you're at a given point of time, it's like a glass, it's full. Either you have emptied, you cannot put new water into that. You have to empty it. So the second one, after building competence, is the confidence. Many of the leaders today lack confidence, confidence to perform. And they're always suspicious about fear of failure, hunting them. So they don't liberate their team, and they don't. So the confidence building is another important thing. I've seen competency-wise, a lot of good managers, but they lack confidence. They don't give an agile language permission to play. They hold their people. You need to give permission to play to the people. That in old terms we call delegation, but new agile terminology is called give permission to play, empower them so that they can play, and you make mistakes, and that's okay. The last one is capacity. The leadership capacity is one thing I've seen a lot of leaders miss today. They have the competency, they have the confidence, they don't have the capacity. The capacity is, it's a long run. It's not a month job or a year job. Some of you get a leadership position at the age of 27 or 25. I'm just making today. When I was there, I was the vice president of G at the age of 27. So you get a very early, then you have a long run, 27 to 60, my God. And it's you have to run, and you cannot get burned out, and you cannot destroy like a monkey with a gun. You cannot destroy the value around you. How do you nurture the value? And how do you've seen young managers, I've seen in recent past, a lot of bad news, people getting heart attack and die. So how do you keep yourself physically fit, emotionally fit? And how do you really ensure that you have a purpose in life that drives you beyond the money and other things like Phil mentioned? So the long run, a manager need to have it, or a leader need to have it consciously, is so important. I call it as capacity. So the competency, confidence, and capacity, if you don't build as a leader, you never. So I've seen, Philippe also did mention to that. I've read an article, all of you might have read an article by name, Manage Your Energy, Not Your Time. So in manage, time is finite, isn't it? 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, 24 into 7 weeks long. Still we feel it's incomplete, lot to do. So you cannot manage your time, but you can manage your energy. So what you do in 24 hours is absolutely, it's your prerogative, isn't it? And I can get up at 4 o'clock and equip yoga, and I equip my energy. So he says there are 4 types of energy: the physical energy, the ability to run long hours and work hard, compute, travel, and all these things. Then your intellectual energy, your ability to read and engage intellectually with others. The third one is what we call it as emotional energy, your ability to engage with others, not get into argumentative, listen, a lot of such traits. The last one is, Philippe already mentioned, this spiritual energy. That is not the yoga or religion, it's a purpose. So what manager does in a day depends on the energy, what he cultivates in the organization. That energy is important to have a long run of what call it as capacity. So a lot of managers focus on competency, but you need to parallelly focus on confidence. And once you are confident, you make others confident. You give permission to play. If you're not confident, you create a lot of insecurities around you because you yourself is insecure. So how do you make yourself confident and build a confident enterprise, a confident ecosystems around you? And how do you really build a capacity? Like it's a sprint. It's it's a long run. And so that's what. So I think Venkat, we have done a lot of work with you in managerial coaching. So one thing I always tell the coaches who work with us is really help our employees professionally successful. Family lives, they should be successful. They should get energy from family, not from corporates, because that's a bad energy if you get from corporates. And they need to take care of their physical and mental health because it's a long run. Otherwise, you can burn out at the age of 35, 40, and 45. You need to keep going. So the coaching has to be a well-rounded, not only for performance, for family and health. You need to coach people.
Absolutely. Very, very well said, Sri. And in fact, I mean, it's all of those different elements that need to come together as well. Yeah. I wanted to tag on to one word that you used, which is very important for everybody, Sri, which is purpose. Now, yeah. I'm going to put Philippe on the spot. What have you realized? I mean, purpose is something that drives. It's the true north for the individual. It's the true north for the manager, for the organization. How does this alignment on purpose happen, Philippe?
Well, in coaching, it's really about creating a space for reflection. So when there is that safe space, when there is confidentiality, when there is benevolence, I would simply ask the question, what is your purpose? What is really important to you? And then I would let the person just reflect on that. So I'm not trying to, in this case, impose any view, but just listen to what the person would have to say. And surprisingly, I see senior leaders who have said to me, I hadn't really thought about this until you ask, what is really my purpose? What is really important to me? Alternative questions or additional questions would be, what is the legacy you want to leave behind? What is this all about? So to evoke that is mainly about listening, asking questions, creating that safe space for people to explore. You can, in a way, this is something that could be done autonomously if you ask those questions and invite people to reflect on that. Having asked those questions, they can go a long way already. Then we have additional activities we could imagine. And when you are very familiar with Venkat, because we had the privilege to do this together, I was pleased to spend 2 seminars with you and Priya a few years ago in India. And remember what we did was inviting people to do some collages. So an artistic activity, they had to create their own collages and then ask the collage to tell them what the purpose is. So it's a bit weird, may seem a bit strange to do that, but it turns out that by doing that, we invite people to tap into more of their unconscious, intuitive part. And interestingly, when they do this on their own or when they coach each other around an artwork that they've created, that will help to uncover some sense of purpose that they were not necessarily conscious about. And so to go a bit deeper in that reflection. So those are ways to evoke that in people. So it's not about saying, you should do this, you should do that. I don't think we can really convince people, certainly not what Sri was talking about with integrity and authenticity. That's what we want to evoke. We cannot just say, you should do this, you should do that. It has to come from within. All we can do is evoke that by being simply present with people, by listening to them, by asking those questions.
Absolutely.
Hey, Venki, if you're okay,
Yeah, please.
add a few comments on that. This is a topic I'm very passionate about it. And I always believe purpose with the passion is a dangerous combination, isn't it? I was just blessed to work for companies like Toyota, I mentioned. Toyota had a concept called the 5 whys. I don't know, many of you know. Philippe, you are in Japan, so you might have heard Japanese asking 5 times why before I approve something. I've seen first time itself, they ask why, people will run away. They don't know how to answer why. Forget about second and third and fourth and fifth why before they approve it. It's so painful to get approved because they ask why. Why should we do that? So purpose is why. So I was really trained on asking questions. Why? Why should we do this? Why should you do what you are doing? That's a simple definition of purpose. Can you explain why you are doing what you are doing? So we always do on what and when and how. We really very mastered. We can Excel sheet, we can project management tools to capture that and report the actions. But you ask the guy to stop and say, tell me, forget your Excel sheet in project management and tell me why we should do this. So that's a very powerful question. So start with why. There is a book written and Pathway to Purpose by Simon Sinek and all this work. And Simon Sinek help us to define. And we are a purposeful organization, UI, building a better working world. We defined work purpose and employee personal purpose. We connect. I have defined my purpose as a basically what do you call it as leaving a legacy in family, community, and organization which I belong to and help others to do it. I was nurturing this purpose over a period of long time. And when I did this exercise recently, when I left DXC Technologies, I about to go to US to take up a CHRO role in Philadelphia. So my wife and daughter was not really helping and not allowing me. It was a big salary. They said, no, why you should take that? Then that triggered me. I was reading a lot of literature on purpose. Then I found a very interesting literature. It says, when you define purpose, answer 5 questions. And if you can answer it, you'll get your purpose. First one is, who am I? Is the first question. I'm a father, I'm a leader, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a father-in-law, all these kind of things. Second one is, after defining who are you, who am I, what do I do well in this today? Am a father role doing very well, or I'm doing a very well role as a leader or a son? What I've seen in my own career, I did not do some of the roles which I'm supposed to be, but I was traveling, not caring of a son's role to a father, which I regret right now. So who are you? Define it and tell me, what are you good at today? The third question is, for whom you are doing what you do today? That's a very powerful question. I thought I'm going to Philadelphia to make family happy because I can get money. And then do they really want it? That's the fourth question. And I realized they don't want it. I thought I'm doing all these things in life. I thought I'm doing all these things for them. They said, no, we don't want that. Then the fifth question is, what do you do? How do they take it and change their lives? That's the fifth question, very powerful question. So if you answer this 5, I tried with many people when I coach on purpose. In fact, we are onboarding a lady to drive purpose in the organization as a chief purpose officer. We believe if you can drive purpose and connect employee purpose with the work purpose and organizational purpose, your productivity, your engagement, one of the solutions in attrition, great resignation, I'm showing up 3 areas. One is the band-aids like compensation, retention bonus, counter offer. These are band-aids. You have to do it in this marketplace. And sometimes you empty your band-aid box, you don't have anything in terms of resources. Then second one is short-term, like promoting people and rotating people, give them international assignment. Then the long-term. I think I don't want to take an IO now. I strongly believe defining purpose for employees, help them to define the purpose, connect with the work purpose, will be a long-term solution for you. So I have told my team to work on short-term band-aids and mid-term and long-term. So purpose is a thing, I think it's take a time, but you have to start now and you'll see results coming in. So please answer yourself this 5 questions: who am I, what I do today, and for whom I do it. Do they really want it? And do they take it and change their lives? I thought just add a few colors to that.
Beautiful. Thanks for that, Sri. And I'm conscious of time as well. So one last question to you, Philippe. We talked about all of these multiple different perspectives and possibilities and purpose and everything else. How can managers bring all of this together, Philippe?
Well, one way is we've been talking about this, Venkat and Priya. How can we help managers and leaders do that? When I wrote the book Global Coaching, my purpose was to help to stimulate a reflection on this topic. And then we had a seminar together, and we had 10, 15 people there, and we had a great experience. But realistically, it's difficult to ask people these days to devote 3 days to come to a residential seminar to learn about this. So the question is, how can we stimulate a personal reflection on these topics? Because we can go a long way by just inviting people to be aware of all these perspectives we have discussed and to engage in a personal reflection. So what we have just done is, I think you know it is, we have created a masterclass with videos. And I think that is our attempt to help people learn about leadership, the type of leadership that is needed today, and not just learn about what they should do, but engage in a personal explorational journey to learn more about what is culture, how could they embed that in their leadership. What is the spiritual perspective? What can I learn about this? How can I do this in practice? How can I weave that into my leadership today in practice? Same thing about psychology, same thing about the physical perspective. So maybe you can talk about this masterclass that we have created. That is one way of doing that. Beyond that, I would encourage people to just seek every opportunity to learn and to engage with a coach. It could be a professional coach, if possible. It could be also a peer. But it's not just about giving each other advice and saying you should do this, you should do that. But it's about listening and helping people access their own wisdom, their own resources, reflect on their purpose, and helping them live a life that is more aligned with their sense of purpose.
Wonderful. Wonderful. In fact, I mean, this is a wonderful opportunity for me to bring everything together. What I've learned here is that there are band-aids, there is purpose, and what we have to look at as managers is to create this growth mindset, is to build a lot of learning that helps you to become inspirational and motivational, that can help you to be this magnet for talent, where they look at you with respect, where they want to work with you because it's their choice, not because of where you are within the organization. Allow me to go ahead and say a personal thanks to Sri and to Philippe. We value and respect your perspectives. And I think it is not just the 40 of us who are on this call who are appreciating all of this. It's going to be shared with everybody else so that they can benefit from each one of your perspectives and contribution. Thank you so very much for your time, for your commitment, for your engagement, and for your contribution.